The blade bit into the ice, a harsh scrape vibrating all the way up my shin. The arena air was thin, cold enough to burn the lungs, but the heat radiating from the body pressed against mine made the temperature irrelevant. Sasha's hand gripped my waist, not with the gentle support of a partner, but with the bruising intensity of a rival who knew exactly where my balance point lived. We were spinning too fast, the centrifugal force trying to tear us apart. Her eyes locked onto mine, dark and terrifyingly calm amidst the blur. "Don't you dare let go, or we both fall," she demanded, her voice cutting through the wind of our own making. It wasn't a request. It was a challenge. And in that split second suspended on a quarter-inch of steel, I knew she meant more than just the ice. To understand why her hand on my waist felt like a violation of the laws of physics, you have to understand the decade of silence that preceded it. For 10 years, we had traded podium spots. I was the technician, a creature of geometry and calculated landings. Sasha was the artist, skating with a reckless, beautiful violence that made judges gasp. We were oil and water, fire and mathematics, and for a decade, the only communication we'd shared was the sharp, assessing glare across the ice as scores were read. Now we were sitting in Coach Markov's office, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee, deep heat rub, and impending doom. Markov didn't look up from his clipboard, his pen scratching aggressively against the paper. "No partners," he said, his Russian accent thick and final. "Nationals in 4 months. You want gold? You skate together." The silence that followed was heavy. I looked at Sasha. She was sprawled in the visitor's chair, checking her nails, radiating that infuriating ease that had always driven me crazy. "She's a singles skater," I said, my voice tight, refusing to look at her. "She doesn't know how to track a partner. She'll kill me on a throw jump." Sasha finally looked up, her gaze lazy and sharp. "And you're a robot," she countered, her voice low and textured. "You skate like you're afraid the ice is going to bite you. Maybe you need a little danger." Markov slammed his hand on the desk, rattling the trophies on the shelf. "Enough! The Federation is tired of solo careers that stall at bronze. You two have the highest component scores in the country. Combined, you are unstoppable. Separate, you are retired." Retired. The word hung there, sucking the oxygen out of the small room. I was 24. In figure skating years, I was already ancient. This was it. The end of the line. I looked at Sasha again. The arrogance was still there, the tilt of her chin that said she owned the room. But for the first time, I saw the tension in her jaw. She needed this too. Her solo career had imploded last season after a disastrous injury and a reputation for being uncoachable. We were 2 drowning swimmers, realizing the only life raft was the shark that had been circling us for years. "I lead," Sasha said, breaking the silence. "In the lifts. I set the tempo." I bristled. "The stronger partner lifts. My core stability is better." Sasha laughed, a dark, throaty sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Strength isn't just about lifting weights, darling. It's about holding the audience. And I never let them go." Markov waved a hand dismissively. "You figure out the physics. I figure out the medals. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Do not be late." Walking out of that office felt like stepping onto a different planet. The hallway of the training center was long and dimly lit, the hum of the Zamboni echoing from the main rink like a distant beast. We walked side by side, not touching, but the space between us felt charged, magnetic. It was the same tension I felt before a triple Lutz, the coil of energy right before the release. I glanced at her profile. She was staring straight ahead, her expression unreadable, but I could hear the rhythm of her breathing, steady, deliberate. "You know," she said, stopping at the heavy metal door that led to the parking lot. She didn't turn to face me. "This only works if you trust me." The irony was sharp enough to cut. "I don't trust you, Sasha. I've spent 10 years trying to beat you." She finally turned, and the street lamp outside caught the predatory gleam in her eyes. "Exactly," she murmured, stepping just a fraction closer, invading my personal space with that casual dominance she wore like a second skin. "You know exactly what I'm capable of. That's better than trust. That's respect." She turned and walked away into the night, leaving me standing in the cold, my heart hammering a rhythm that had nothing to do with cardio and everything to do with the sudden, terrifying realization that my biggest rival was about to become the only person in the world allowed to hold me up. The silence in the locker room the next morning wasn't the meditative quiet I cherished. It was heavy, pressurized, like the air before a thunderstorm breaks. We laced our skates on opposite benches, the rhythmic snick of tightening laces, the only conversation allowed. I focused on my ritual: tape, blister pads, not tension, ignoring the fact that my career now depended on the woman humming a discordant pop song 10 feet away. Sasha didn't prepare. She just existed. She threw her bag into the locker with a chaotic clang, flashed a grin that didn't reach her eyes, and headed for the door. The ice was a sheet of fresh glass. Usually, I would step out and stake my claim, running through my edges in isolation. But today, the ice felt smaller. Coach Markov stood at the boards, looking less like a coach and more like a warden. "Basic stroking," he barked. "Killian, hold. Do not look at your feet. Look at each other." When Sasha glided up beside me, the invasion of personal space was jarring. I could smell her. Something sharp, like citrus and ozone. "Ready, princess?" she murmured. I hesitated before taking her hand. I expected the cold hold of a competitor. Instead, her grip was warm, calloused, and firm. As we pushed off, the sensation was disorienting. Every stride had to be calibrated to hers. If I pushed too hard, I pulled her forward. If I dragged, I became dead weight. "You are skating like strangers," Markov shouted. "Closer! Hips together!" I gritted my teeth, trying to adjust. But Sasha took charge. Without warning, her free hand left the air and settled on my waist. It wasn't a tentative placement. It was a claim. Her fingers dug into the fabric of my training top, finding the curve of my hip bone with unnerving familiarity. The heat of her palm seemed to sear right through the layers of spandex. "You're stiff," she said, her voice dropping to that low register that vibrated in my chest. We were moving fast, the wind rushing past, but she felt like the eye of the storm. "Stop calculating." "I'm trying not to trip you," I shot back, staring ahead. The proximity was overwhelming. Her thigh brushed mine with every crossover, a rhythmic, friction-heavy contact that spiked my adrenaline. "Look at me," she commanded. She applied pressure to my waist, a subtle torque, forcing my upper body to rotate toward her. I met her gaze. Her eyes were dark, dilated, looking at me like a puzzle she was about to solve by force. "Relax your shoulders," she said, and her hand slid up to the center of my back. She pressed. Hard. It was a dominance move, a physical correction that forced my chest open. My body reacted instinctively, arching into her hand, surrendering the tension I hadn't realized I was holding. For a second, we fit. The blades synchronized. The noise fell away, leaving only the electric charge of her skin against my back. Then my brain caught up. I panicked, realizing I had given her control, and jerked away. The shift threw us off. We stumbled, blades screeching, and slammed into the boards. I shoved myself off the wall, breathless and furious. "Don't!" I snapped, my voice echoing too loudly. "Don't handle me like a prop." Sasha leaned against the plexiglass, a smirk playing on her lips. "Then stop skating like you're made of glass," she said smoothly. "If you want me to let go, say the word. But we both know you liked the stability." "I don't need your stability," I lied. though my skin was still burning where she had touched me. "Everyone needs stability," she countered, gliding backward away from me. "Especially you." Weeks slowly bled into a blur of bruised hips and the relentless friction of two egos forced into a single orbit. The technical elements were slowly clicking. Crossovers synchronized, spin velocities matched, but the lifts were a war zone. You have to trust that the person throwing you into the air cares enough to catch you. With Sasha, I wasn't sure if she wanted the gold or just wanted to see if I'd bounce. We were working on a twisted lift, requiring me to lock my blade into her thigh while she rotated. It demanded absolute rigidity from me and stability from her. But every time I went up, my body rebelled. I could feel the instability of the air, the terrifying distance from the ice. "You're shaking," Sasha grunted, setting me down harder than necessary. We were breathless, the cold air burning. "I can't balance when you're vibrating like that." "I'm vibrating because you're off axis," I snapped, skating a small circle to flush the lactic acid. "The torque is wrong." Sasha skated into my path, stopping me. She was sweating, strands of damp hair sticking to her forehead, looking wild and infuriating. She stepped closer, invading that sacred bubble of personal space. "You're not afraid of falling. You're afraid of letting me have control." "I feel plenty of control," I retorted, mostly over my own pain. "Liar." She grabbed my hand. "Throw triple loop. Now. Just jump." The throw triple loop is a trust exercise from a sadist. The partner assists the jump, hurling you into rotation. If the timing is off by a millisecond, it's a disaster. We gathered speed. I felt the familiar bite of the edge, the coil of potential energy. Sasha was right there, a dark presence. I felt her hand on my hip, the signal to launch. But in that critical split second, I hesitated. I checked the angle. I doubted. The launch was botched. I went up crooked, the rotation sickeningly off. I couldn't find my landing leg. Gravity reclaimed me. I hit the ice unforgivingly hard, sliding out of control, tangling with Sasha's skates. We went down in a heap of limbs and steel. The impact knocked the wind out of me. I lay there, staring up at the arena lights, gasping. Then I realized I wasn't just lying on the ice. I was pinned. Sasha was hovering over me, her weight supported on her forearms, her body effectively caging mine. The silence was absolute. I could hear the hum of the compressors and the ragged sound of our breathing. Sasha didn't move. She just stared down, her face inches from mine. I saw the flecks of gold in her irises, the flush of exertion. A drop of sweat fell from her brow, landing on my collarbone like a brand. This was the proximity of a lover, not a teammate. Her thigh was pressed between mine, a heavy, solid weight. The cold seeped through my back, but the heat radiating from her was overwhelming. My heart hammered, not from the fall, but from the sudden realization that I didn't want her to move. I wanted her to lower herself that final inch. "You hesitated," she whispered, her voice rough. She wasn't angry, she sounded wrecked. "I had you. I was right there." "I know," I breathed. Her gaze dropped to my lips. The air thickened, charged with enough electricity to short out the scoreboard. For a moment, the rivalry, the medals, the years of hostility, it all dissolved into this raw, undeniable gravity. "Get up," Markov's voice boomed, shattering the moment. "This is ice rink, not bedroom. We are wasting time." Sasha flinched, the spell breaking. She pushed herself up, offering a hand. I took it, but as she pulled me to my feet, her grip lingered, a silent acknowledgement of the precipice we had just looked over. "Off ice," Markov commanded sharply. "You have sink issues. Go to gym. Go to dinner. I don't care. Do not come back until you learn to breathe at same time." I couldn't sleep. Markov's words rattled in my head like loose change in a dryer. Sink issues. It wasn't a technical problem. It was a soul problem. My body knew the mechanics, but my mind refused to surrender the autonomy I'd spent a decade perfecting. At 2 a.m., my apartment felt like a cage. I needed the ice. The ice was the only place the world made sense, where variables could be controlled. I drove to the rink in a daze. The building was a hulking shadow against the night sky. I had a key, one of the few perks of being a national team veteran. I expected the hollow silence of an empty cathedral. Instead, as I pushed through the heavy double doors, I heard it. Shk, shk, the rhythmic tearing sound of a deep edge carving ice. The main lights were off. The rink was illuminated only by the security lights, casting long, ghostly shadows across the surface. And there she was, Sasha. She wasn't wearing her usual flashy practice gear, just black leggings and a tight, long-sleeve shirt that disappeared into the gloom. She was skating a pattern I didn't recognize, something fluid, circular, hypnotic. She looked like a specter, or maybe a predator patrolling its territory. I should have left. I should have turned around and gone back to my safe, lonely apartment. But the pull was physical. I laced up in the dark, fingers fumbling slightly. When I stepped onto the ice, the sound of my blade hitting the surface was like a gunshot in the quiet. Sasha didn't stop. She didn't even look at me. She just adjusted her arc, widening the circle to include me. I fell into step behind her, keeping a safe distance. The acoustics in the dark were terrifyingly intimate. I could hear the friction of her edges, the soft whoosh of air as she accelerated. "You're loud," she called out, her voice echoing in the rafters. She didn't turn around. "Too much punctuation." She suddenly cut a hard 3-turn, transitioning backward so she was facing me, gliding in reverse while I skated forward. We were moving fast now. "Follow me." It was a command, not a suggestion. She spun around and accelerated. This was a game we used to play as juniors, shadowing. You have to match your partner's every move, instantaneously, without knowing what's coming. It requires a telepathic level of focus. Sasha didn't make it easy. She dove into a deep inside edge, body nearly parallel to the ice. I matched her. She snapped into a counter-turn, changing direction violently. I followed, my blade carving the exact same line a split second later. There was no time to think, no time to calculate vectors. If I thought, I crashed. I had to feel her. I had to watch the shift of her weight, the tension in her shoulders, and react before my brain could process the data. She laughed, a bright, genuine sound that bounced off the empty stands. "That's it! Stop thinking, just feel." She led me into a sequence of intricate footwork, choctaws, rockers, twizzles, moving faster and faster. The darkness blurred the world until there was nothing but her. I wasn't skating anymore. I was being pulled in her wake. The fear vanished, replaced by a rush of adrenaline so pure it felt like flying. We were a single organism, 2 hearts beating a frantic, synchronized rhythm against the cold. She suddenly broke the pattern, transitioning into a spread eagle, gliding on the outside edge with arms wide open. I mirrored her instantly. We swept across the center ice, chest to chest, separated by inches of air, spinning in a wide, glorious arc. The world tilted. For the first time, I wasn't looking at the ice. I was looking at her. She was grinning, wild and breathless, her hair a mess, her eyes shining in the dim light. We coasted to a stop in the center of the rink. The silence that rushed back in wasn't heavy like before. It was vibrating. We stood there, chests heaving, clouds of condensation mixing in the space between our faces. The hostility was gone. The rivalry felt like a distant memory, something that belonged to two other people in the daylight. Here, in the dark, there was only this magnetic, terrifying pull. The air around us felt charged, thick with the heat we'd generated. "See?" she whispered, the word hanging in the cold air, intimate and wrecking. "You can fly when you let go." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized with a jolt of panic that I didn't want to land. The hotel room in Detroit smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee, a scent that would forever be associated with the slow unraveling of my sanity. It was a suite by technicality only, a single room with a partition that did nothing to block the sound of Sasha unzipping her gear bag. The Federation had messed up the booking, or maybe Markov had orchestrated this forced domesticity to accelerate our bonding. Either way, I was trapped in 300 square feet with the woman who had haunted my career for a decade, and my body was staging a mutiny. The midnight session had come with a steep price. My right trapezius was a screaming knot of tension, a hard lump of iron tucked under my shoulder blade that radiated fire every time I moved. I sat on the edge of the stiff hotel bed, trying to rotate my neck without wincing, staring at the beige carpet patterns. I was a machine that needed maintenance, but my mechanic was currently stripping off her warm-up jacket on the other side of the room, looking annoyingly fresh. "You're guarding," Sasha's voice cut through the hum of the air conditioner. I froze mid-stretch. "I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar, princess. You haven't turned your head to the left since we checked in." The mattress dipped behind me. I hadn't even heard her move across the carpet. That was the thing about Sasha. She was loud when she wanted to be, and terrifyingly silent when she was hunting. "It's the trap, isn't it? You were tense on the throw landing. You took the impact in your neck." "It's just a little tight," I muttered, reaching back to massage the spot uselessly. "I'll take an ibuprofen and sleep it off." Ibuprofen won't fix bad mechanics. Her hands settled on my shoulders. I flinched. The contact was electric, immediate. Her palms were hot, significantly warmer than the chilled hotel air, and the weight of them felt heavy, grounding. "Sit still. If you go into the short program locked up like this, you'll drop me." "I never drop you," I defended. But the protest died in my throat as her thumbs dug into the muscle with shocking force. It hurt. It was a sharp, blinding ache that made my vision swim. But beneath the pain was a shameful wave of relief. Sasha didn't ask for permission. She simply took control. She worked the knot with clinical brutality, her fingers finding the exact epicenter of the tension. I gasped, my head dropping forward, exposing the back of my neck to the room, to her. "Breathe," she commanded, her voice lower now, right by my ear. "You hold everything right here. All that control, all that fear. You carry it like armor." "I'm not afraid," I whispered, though my voice sounded wrecked, breathless. "You are." Her thumb pressed hard, grinding out the resistance. "You're terrified of losing control. But look, nothing bad is happening. The world isn't ending just because you let someone else take the wheel." The shift was subtle at first. One moment it was therapeutic, a teammate fixing a mechanical failure. The next, the air in the room grew heavy, thick with a sudden, suffocating intimacy. Her hands stopped digging and started kneading, the rhythm slowing down. Her fingers splayed out, tracing the line of my spine, slipping just beneath the collar of my shirt. Her touch wasn't medicinal anymore. It was possessive. I could feel the heat radiating from her body behind me. She was close enough that her breath ghosted against the sensitive skin of my neck. The silence stretched, filled only by the ragged sound of my own breathing. I should have pulled away. I should have made a joke, stood up, reasserted the boundaries of our rivalry. But I was paralyzed. My body, usually so disciplined, was betraying me, leaning back into her warmth, craving the friction of her hands. "You're so soft when you stop fighting," she murmured. It wasn't a taunt. It was a discovery. Her hand slid up to cup the side of my neck, her thumb brushing the pulse that was hammering frantically against my skin. "It would be so easy to break you." The double meaning hung there, suspended in the amber light of the hotel lamp. She wasn't talking about skating. She was talking about this, the terrifying slide into something undefined and dangerous. If I turned around now, our faces would be inches apart. If I turned around, I knew exactly what would happen. And that knowledge terrified me more than any triple axel. I jerked away, standing up so fast the room spun. The loss of her touch was a physical shock, leaving my skin cold. "I'm fine," I said, my voice sharp, brittle. I walked to the window, staring out at the parking lot, refusing to look at her. "It's loose." "Thank you." The silence behind me was heavy. I could feel her watching me, could feel the smirk I couldn't see. "Suit yourself," she said softly, the sound of her zipper breaking the tension. "But you can't run forever. The ice is a small place." If the ice was a battlefield, the media zone was a theater of war, where the weapons were smiles and sound bites. The press had smelled blood in the water, or, in our case, pheromones. The narrative shifted overnight. We were no longer two desperate skaters clinging to a final chance at glory. We were fire and ice, a redemption arc so perfectly scripted it felt like fiction. The skating world loves a tragedy, but it loves a romance even more. And suddenly, every journalist with a microphone wanted to know if the heat on the ice translated to real life. We were sitting on a plush beige couch in a makeshift studio inside the arena, the lights blindingly hot against my face. The interviewer, a woman with teeth too white to be natural, leaned forward with predatory interest. "So," she purred, glancing between us, "from bitter rivals to partners. That's quite a transition. How do you navigate that kind of emotional shift?" I opened my mouth to give the rehearsed answer about technical compatibility and shared goals, but Sasha moved first. She shifted on the couch, draping her arm along the back of the seat behind me. Her fingers brushed the nape of my neck, a casual, possessive touch that sent a jolt of static straight down my spine. The camera didn't see her thumb tracing small, soothing circles against my skin, but I felt it. It was a claim. "It wasn't really a shift," Sasha said, her voice dropping into that smooth, charming register she reserved for the cameras. She looked at me, not the interviewer, and her gaze was heavy, lidded. "We've always been obsessed with each other. Rivalry is just a form of intimacy, isn't it? You spend years studying someone's every move, their weaknesses, their strengths. I probably know her body better than she does." The interviewer giggled, actually giggled. I felt the flush rise in my cheeks, fighting the urge to stiffen. Sasha was playing the game, feeding the beast, but the way she said it, obsessed, felt uncomfortably close to the truth that had surfaced in the dark of the rink. "And the trust?" the interviewer pressed. "That lift in your short program is dangerous." "I trust her with my life," Sasha said. She wasn't looking at the camera anymore. She was looking at my mouth. "She's the only person strong enough to handle me." My breath hitched. It was a line. It had to be a line. But the weight of her arm around me felt heavy and real, an anchor in the artificial brightness of the studio. The photo shoot that followed was worse. The magazine wanted intensity. They wanted the cover to sell the rivalry-turned-partnership angle, which apparently meant placing us in positions that would get us disqualified from a competition for indecency. The photographer, a frantic man in a scarf, kept waving his hands. "Closer! I want to see the friction! Break the space!" Sasha stood behind me, her chest pressed against my back, her chin resting on my shoulder. Her hands were on my waist, fingers splayed wide over the sequins of my costume. The studio was freezing, but I was burning up. "Chin up," Sasha whispered against my ear, her breath hot and moist. "Look at the lens like you want to destroy it."
"I want to destroy you," I muttered through a fixed smile.
"Good," she murmured, tightening her grip. "Use that."
"Now turn," the photographer shouted. "Face each other, foreheads touching. Almost a kiss, but don't give it away. The tension is the money shot."
We turned. I was suddenly nose to nose with her, our bodies pressed together from chest to thigh. The world narrowed down to the gold flecks in her eyes and the scent of her citrus perfume mixed with the hairspray hanging in the air. Her lips were inches from mine, hovering. I could count her eyelashes. I could see the tiny pulse jumping in her throat. "You're trembling," she whispered, so quietly the microphone boom overhead wouldn't catch it.
"I hate this," I lied, my eyes dropping to her mouth. "Do you?"
Sasha tilted her head, just a fraction, closing the gap until the air between our lips vibrated with shared breath. "Because you look like you're about to risk it all."
"Beautiful," the photographer screamed, the shutter clicking rapidly like gunfire. "The natural heat. You can't fake that. That is chemistry, ladies." The flash blinded me, but I didn't blink. I was trapped in her gaze, paralyzed by the terrifying realization that for the first time all day, neither of us was acting. By the time we got back to the locker room, I was shaking. I scrubbed the heavy stage makeup off my face with aggressive swipes of a wipe, trying to remove the mask of the passionate partner along with the foundation. The silence in the room was deafening. Sasha was sitting on the bench, unlacing her skates, humming that same discordant pop song. I spun around, the makeup wipe clenched in my fist. "Is this a joke to you?" Sasha paused, her hands stilling on the laces. She looked up, her expression unreadable, the playful mask from the interview gone. "What? The arm around me? The comments about obsession? The whatever that was in the photo shoot?" My voice cracked, betraying me. "Are we selling tickets, Sasha? Is that all I am? A prop for your redemption narrative?" Sasha stood up slowly. She crossed the small space between us in 2 strides, backing me against the lockers. She didn't touch me, but she was close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off her skin. "You think I'm that good an actress?" she asked quietly, her voice devoid of the media charm, raw and low. "You think I could fake the way my heart races when I hold you? You think I could fake the way I look at you?" "I don't know what to think," I whispered. "You play games with everything." "I play to win," she said, leaning in until her forehead rested against mine, recreating the pose from the photo shoot, but without the cameras, without the audience. This was just us. And I'm not playing anymore. She pulled back before I could respond, grabbing her bag and walking out the door, leaving the air in the locker room vibrating, heavy with the truth neither of us was ready to speak. The timeline to nationals had dissolved from months into a terrifying countdown of hours. 2 weeks, 14 days, 336 hours until the music started and the world judged whether our redemption was gold or garbage. The pressure wasn't just in the air, it was in the ice itself, making the surface feel brittle, unforgiving. We were running the long program, a complex, sweeping narrative set to a heavy cello piece that demanded everything we had. We were 3 minutes in, lungs burning, legs heavy with lactic acid, approaching the final lift. It was a rotational lift, dangerous and fast. Sasha's blade dug in, her speed increasing. I stepped into the entry, calculating the velocity, the torque, the exact moment of weight transfer. But my brain stuttered. A flash of the scoreboard, a memory of a fall 3 years ago, a sudden, blinding fear that I wasn't enough. I hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. A hesitation in pair skating is a death sentence. I missed the lock. My blade slipped. Instead of soaring, I collapsed. Gravity took over, violent and immediate. I fell hard, sliding uncontrollably across the ice. Sasha, off balance from my failure, tried to correct, her skate flashing past my face. The serrated toe pick missed my cheek by a millimeter, the wind of it cooling the sweat on my skin. Silence plummeted over the rink. Even Markov didn't yell. That was worse. I scrambled up, not looking at Sasha, not looking at the coach. I skated straight for the gate, the sound of my blades erratic and panicked. "Hey!" Sasha called out, but I was already off the ice, tearing at my laces before I even hit the bench. I fled to the locker room, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't undo the clasps of my dress. I was spiraling, a chaotic descent into the dark logic that had whispered to me for years. I was the anchor. I was the dead weight. Sasha was a star, a supernova of talent, and I was the technicality dragging her into the dark. The door banged open. Sasha didn't walk in. She stormed in. "Get out," I choked out, finally managing to rip my skate off and throwing it into my bag. "Call Elena. She's an alternate. She has the rotation speed. If you start training with her now—" "Shut up," Sasha said. It wasn't loud, but it stopped the air in my lungs. "I almost took your knee out, Sasha. I hesitated. You can't skate with a partner who freezes." I stood up, grabbing my bag, desperate to run, to escape the gravity of her presence. "I am saving you. I am doing the math, and the math says I am the variable that makes us fail." I tried to push past her. It was a mistake. Sasha slammed her hand against the locker next to my head, blocking my path. She didn't flinch. She stepped into my space, forcing me back until my shoulder blades hit the cold metal. She wasn't smiling. The playful dominance, the media charm, it was all gone. What was left was something fierce, terrifying, and raw. "You think this is math?" she hissed, her face inches from mine. "You think you can calculate your way out of this? You're not a variable, you idiot. You're my partner." "I'm the weak link," I whispered, tears finally spilling over, hot and humiliating. "I can't do it. I can't be who you need me to be." Sasha grabbed my face between her hands. Her grip was tight, bordering on painful, forcing me to look at her. Her eyes were blazing. "Who I need," she demanded. "You think I want Elena? You think I want some compliant little doll who just smiles and rotates? I want you. I want the friction. I want the way you fight me for every inch of ice. I want the way you make me better because you refuse to let me be sloppy." "I almost hurt you," I sobbed. "So what? We fall, we bleed. That's the job." Her thumbs brushed away the tears, her voice dropping, shifting from anger to a fierce, protective intensity that buckled my knees. "You are not the weak link. You are the only thing holding me to the earth. Without your edges, I'm just chaos. I need your geometry to survive the fall." She leaned her forehead against mine, her breathing ragged, matching my own. "Don't you dare run from me," she whispered, a command that felt like a prayer. "Don't you dare let go. Because if you leave, I don't skate. It's you or it's nothing. That is the only math that matters." The panic in my chest began to recede, replaced by the steady, overwhelming reality of her belief in me. She wasn't asking me to be perfect. She was asking me to stay. "Okay," I breathed, the fight draining out of me. "Okay." Sasha pulled back, searching my face, making sure the spiral had stopped. Then she nodded, stepped back, and pointed to the door. "Good. Now put your skates back on. We have a lift to nail." We walked back out to the ice, not as rivals, and not just as partners. We stepped onto the frozen surface as two parts of the same whole, bound by a terrifying, beautiful necessity. The night before nationals is usually a vigil held for your own sanity. You stare at the ceiling, visualizing edges, counting rotations, trying to keep your heart rate from sprinting a marathon while your body lies still. But this hotel room felt different. It didn't feel like a waiting room for judgment. It felt like the eye of a hurricane. The air was pressurized, heavy with the phantom weight of the thousands of people who would be watching us in less than 24 hours. We had pushed the generic beige armchairs against the wall to clear a 10 by 10 space of carpet. We were marking the program, the silent, ghost version of the routine, where you walk through the choreography without the jumps, focusing on the flow, the hands, the connection. It's a ritual of muscle memory. In socks, without the terrifying velocity of the blades, there is nowhere to hide. On the ice, speed can blur a mistake. On the carpet, every hesitation is a scream. "Measure," Sasha murmured, stepping into the entry for our final lift. Her hands found my waist, light but precise. 1, 2, deep breath, 3. I matched her breathing. That was the secret we had found in the dark. Not matching steps, but matching the intake of air. I turned into her, my back pressing against her chest, my arms extending to find her hands. We weren't looking at each other. I was facing the window, she was behind me, but I could feel the heat of her front against my back, a solid wall of warmth. We moved through the sequence in silence. The room was dim, lit only by the city glow filtering through the sheer curtains. We reached the emotional crescendo of the music that played only in our heads. This was the moment, the pause before the final, frantic footwork sequence. In the routine, we are supposed to pull apart, a moment of separation before the reunion. I stepped forward to break the contact. Sasha didn't let go. Her grip on my hands tightened, anchoring me to her. The choreography dictated distance. She chose proximity. I froze, the imaginary music screeching to a halt. I turned my head, looking over my shoulder. "Sasha?" I whispered. "We separate here. 4 counts." "No," she said, her voice rough, lacking the usual playful lilt. She pulled me backward until my shoulder blades hit her chest again. She buried her face in the curve of my neck, her breath hot and uneven against my skin. "I'm done separating. I'm done with the 4 counts." My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. "We have to compete tomorrow. We have to be perfect." "We are perfect," she mumbled against my skin, her lips brushing the sensitive spot just below my ear. "We've been perfect since the moment you stopped trying to beat me and started letting me hold you." She spun me around. The movement wasn't choreographed, it was raw impulse. Suddenly I was facing her, the space between us non-existent. Her eyes were dark, searching mine with a terrifying vulnerability. The arrogance was gone. The mask was on the floor. "You think this is just about the gold?" she asked, her hands sliding up my arms to cut my face. "You think I fought the Federation, fought Markov, fought you, just for a medal I've already won twice?" I stared at her, the realization crashing over me like a wave. "Sasha, I wanted you," she confessed, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I've wanted to skate with you since we were juniors. I hated you because you were the only one who made me look at myself and see something missing. I didn't want a partner. I wanted you." The air left my lungs. All those years of glares, of sharp words, of bruising rivalry. It wasn't hatred. It was a desperate, twisted form of longing. "Why didn't you say anything?" I breathed. "Because you needed to win," she whispered, her thumbs tracing my cheekbones. "And I needed to be the one you couldn't beat. But I'm done winning alone." She didn't wait for an answer. She leaned in, closing the final inch of distance that had separated us for a decade. The kiss wasn't tentative. It was a collision, a release of 10 years of friction and repressed gravity. Her lips were soft but demanding, tasting of peppermint tea and desperation.
I made a noise in the back of my throat, a sound of surrender, and wrapped my arms around her neck, pulling her closer, trying to fuse our skeletons together. This wasn't the fake chemistry for the cameras. This was the real thing. Messy, hot, and overwhelming. The fear of tomorrow, the pressure of the judges, the terror of the lifts, it all evaporated. There was only the feel of her hands in my hair, the solid reality of her body pressed against mine, the absolute certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. We stumbled backward, not breaking the kiss, until the back of my knees hit the bed. We collapsed onto the mattress, a tangle of limbs and heavy breathing. There was no urgency to go further, no need to rush, just the desperate need to be close, to hold and be held. Sasha pulled the duvet over us, cocooning us in a private world. She wrapped her arm around my waist, pulling me back against her chest, her chin resting on my shoulder. "Sleep," she commanded softly, her voice thick with sleep and satisfaction. "I've got you. I'm not letting go." And for the first time in my career, the night before a final, I didn't count sheep. I didn't visualize jumps. I closed my eyes, felt the steady rhythm of her heart against my back, and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep, knowing that no matter what happened on the ice, I had already won the thing that mattered most. The arena was a monster made of light and noise, a cavernous beast waiting to swallow us whole. 15,000 people were screaming, a wall of sound that vibrated in the fillings of my teeth and rattled the boards. But standing at the gate, gripping Sasha's hand, the world felt strangely, beautifully quiet. I looked at her. She was adjusting her glove, a familiar nervous tic I had watched from a distance for a decade. But when she looked up, her eyes were clear. There were no games left. No masks to wear for the cameras, just her, stripped of the arrogance, leaving only the raw, terrifying brilliance underneath. "Ready to ruin them?" she asked, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. "Ready to fly," I answered, and I meant it. We stepped onto the ice. The cold hit my face, familiar and sharp, piercing through the adrenaline. Usually, this glide to center ice is the loneliest walk in sports. A march to the gallows, where you stand alone against gravity. Today, it felt like walking into a sanctuary we had built ourselves. We took our opening pose, Sasha behind me, one hand on my waist, the other holding my wrist. My back pressed against her chest. I could feel her heart beating, a steady, frantic rhythm against my spine that calmed my own pulse. I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second, breathing in her scent of citrus and nerves, grounding myself in the reality of her presence. The cello music began, a low, mourning note that swelled into something fierce and demanding. We moved. It wasn't skating, it wasn't mechanics. It was a conversation without words, written in deep edges and velocity. Every crossover was a question, every turn, an answer. I stopped counting rotations. I stopped calculating vectors. I just felt the pressure of her hand, the shift of her weight, the gravitational pull that kept us in orbit. We flowed through the opening sequence, the ice disappearing beneath us. We were moving faster than we ever had in practice, riding the razor's edge of control. But the fear was gone. We moved into the step sequence, the part of the program that usually terrified me with its demand for absolute synchronization. But tonight, it felt like the midnight practice in the dark. I didn't need to look to know where she was. I could feel her presence, like a phantom limb. We carved deep outside edges, our blades singing in harmony, bodies leaning at impossible angles. The crowd was gone. The judges were gone. It was just the dark rink and the sound of her breathing. Then came the moment, the lift. The same rotational entry that had sent me sprawling into the boards weeks ago. The music swelled, demanding violence, demanding height. We gathered speed,
The wind roared in my ears. I felt the familiar coil of fear in my stomach, the old voice whispering that I was too heavy, too weak, too much of a variable to be trusted with this altitude. I looked at Sasha. She wasn't looking at the ice. She was looking at me. Her expression was fierce, a silent command cutting through the panic, anchoring me to the moment. Don't you dare let go, or we both fall. The words echoed in my head, not as a threat this time, but as a promise. She wouldn't let go, which meant I couldn't either. I stepped into the edge. I didn't hesitate. I didn't think. I just surrendered. I launched myself into the air, giving her everything. My weight, my trust, my safety. Her hands were there, solid as stone, catching me at the apex. She lifted me, pressing me toward the rafters, and for a glorious, terrifying second, I was flying. I wasn't a skater anymore. I was weightless, suspended by the sheer force of her will. I looked down at her, anchoring me to the earth, her face twisted in effort and triumph. We landed. The blade bit the ice with a clean, sharp hiss. Perfect. The rest of the program was a blur of adrenaline and joy. We weren't competing against the other teams anymore. We were skating for the midnight sessions, for the bruised shins, for the moment in the hotel room where the rivalry finally died. We were skating for us. The final spin. The world blurred into streaks of color. We slowed, centering the rotation, dropping into the final pose. I collapsed against her, breathless, my head on her shoulder, her arm wrapping around me tight enough to bruise. The music stopped. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the arena exploded. The roar was physical, a wave of sound crashing down on us. But I didn't look at the crowd. I didn't look at the judges. I turned my face into Sasha's neck, tasting the salt on her skin, feeling the frantic heave of her chest against mine. "We did it," she gasped, her voice wrecked and beautiful. "You caught me," I whispered back. "Always," she promised. "I've got you." Sitting in the kiss and cry, the scores flashing up on the screen were just numbers. A world record, a gold medal. It didn't matter. The real victory was happening under the bench, where Sasha's hand found mine, interlacing our fingers in a grip that said she wasn't letting go anytime soon. We had fallen, we had flown, and we had landed together. If you want to see where this partnership goes off the ice, hit subscribe. The real story is just beginning.